Okay, let's talk about this thing right here because it's something you definitely need to know fully to be able to pass geometry. So if you know what this is, hopefully most of you can kind of determine, okay, this looks like something that I'm familiar with, a particular shape. The shape actually starts with a P, okay, but it's part of a subset of shapes in geometry that start with a Q. So I wonder how many out there can think about that and be like, okay, Q and P, what is he talking about? I bet you a lot of you are already like, okay, I know what he's talking about. But anyways, here would be the notation for this. So we have this little symbol and A, B, C, D, and of course these are the points for this. So we're going to talk about things you need to know about this particular shape in geometry. It's a critical shape, and this Q thing here that I'm going to be discussing as well is a very big area in geometry. So this is kind of classic high school level geometry, but whatever you're at, I mean, you don't have to be in high school to learn what I'm going to be teaching you here in a second. But this is taught, definitely at the high school level in geometry at the high school level. So we're going to get into this. It's not going to be too difficult. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. You can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different math courses. Um, I have all the main courses like pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. I'm going to be launching pre-calculus. All these courses, are all video-based, super comprehensive, really unique in terms of how in-depth they are. They're not quick little short tutorial videos. I mean, this is all and let me just say this much. All my courses have taken me years and years to construct. So I don't only launch a course when I think it's absolutely outstanding, okay? And I'm kind of, I don't want to say perfectionist, but it takes me a long time before I can reach that particular standard. So anyways, so I have those courses, but I also do a lot in the area of test preparation. So if you're preparing for an exam like the SAT, ACT, GED, GRE, GMAT, teacher certification, nursing entrance, ASVAB, CLEP exam, AccuPlace, or ALEX, there's a ton of reasons people are studying math that don't necessarily have to be in a math course to be studying math, because you need to know math to get through a lot of these very, very important tests. So if you're studying for one of these particular exams, go to my site and you can check out my course catalog. I should have what you're looking for. If I don't, drop me a line and I'll help you out the best I can. I also work a lot with independent learners like homeschoolers. I have a great homeschool learning system. And then obviously I help those of you who are just struggling in class. So let's say you're struggling in geometry and you need additional help, then like my geometry course would be outstanding for you. But one thing you need to be doing to help yourself is take great math notes. So over decades of teaching mathematics, it's just apparent to me those students that take the time and effort to take excellent notes almost always do well. And the reverse is true. Those students who are just like, yeah, I'm not into note taking. I have a photographic memory. Also, my best friend is in my geometry class with me, so I like to catch up on stuff. And then I check my social media as well. Listen, I get it. I made all those errors, but again, too, I paid a price for that. You're going to pay a price as well in your grades in terms of not taking notes. Okay, if you're going to take a math class, you're going to have to do the hard work. At a minimum, take great notes. If you take great notes, you're almost going to be like 80% there. All right, so this is the secret to making your math life much better. But in the meantime, you need something to study from. So I offer detailed, comprehensive math notes to include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2 and trigonometry. You can find links to those notes in the description of this video. So obviously, if you're watching this video, you'll probably be most interested in my geometry notes. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Well, let's answer the question. The mystery question is P. We're talking about a parallelogram. Yes, you're right. This is a parallelogram. Don't ask me to spell it, because if I spell it right now, I'll probably misspell it. Now, I could probably actually spell it, but yeah, let's just move on. But what is this Q here? Well, this Q, I'm talking about quadrilaterals. So a parallelogram is a type of quadrilateral. Then we can even have another P. If some of you out there said polygons, I would also give you kind of a credit for that. This is a four-sided polygon, but specifically this is a parallelogram. So we're going to talk about the properties of a parallelogram that you need to know. And some of these properties are general properties of quadrilaterals. So let's get to it. And first, just quickly talk about quadrilaterals. Okay, so what is a quadrilateral? Well, a quadrilateral is a four-sided polygon. Okay, those different type of polygons. There's convex and concave. Just basically you need to know is it's a four-sided figure. So we can have something that looks like this. Okay, that's kind of a terrible, let me just kind of write it like so. So this would be an example of, let's say, like a rhombus, okay? Then we have things like a square. Then you have like a rectangle. Then you could just have, you know, anything like this. Like what would this be? Like a trapezoid. Then you could just have any other type of kind of crazy figure. You can have something like so, which is a parallelogram. So parallelograms is what we're going to be talking about, but a parallelogram is a type of quadrilateral, and a quadrilateral is by definition a four-sided polygon. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here with parallelograms, some of these other properties apply to all quadrilaterals, but we're going to be talking about the specific properties of parallelograms, and parallelograms are pretty common, okay? Now, a rectangle and a square also can be considered types of parallelograms. So a lot of these, you know, names, like a square we call, you know, a square for a particular reason. A rectangle is called a rectangle for a particular reason, and a parallelogram has its own reasons, but these are actually similar in terms of their properties, okay? In other words, a square, let's just talk about a square real quick, and we'll talk about rectangle and then get to the parallelogram. But what makes these unique is that these guys over here have right angles, okay? So they have right angles, and a square, in other words, they're 90-degree angles, and then a square, all the sides are equal. Okay, so pretty much everyone's familiar with what a square is. Now on a rectangle, we're dealing with right angles, and opposite sides are congruent, okay? But all the angles in here are 90 degrees. So what we're going to be talking about is a parallelogram, which falls into this kind of classification. So let's just see how much you know about a parallelogram. Okay, so here's what I would want you to do. Think about it real quick. Give me all the different specific properties you think you know about a parallelogram. I actually kind of already gave you a few, so write those down, but there were some others here that I didn't talk about. So what can you tell me? Tell me everything you think you know about a parallelogram. So this is parallelogram A, B, C, D, and these are the vertices, okay, of the parallelogram. In other words, the corners. Okay, so A, B, C, D, and this is the notation for a parallelogram. Okay, so if you don't want to hear these properties, you want to think about it some more, pause the video. But let me go ahead and get into these properties. So first things first, the first, and this is no particular order, okay, but I'm going to tell you every main property you need to know about parallelograms, and we're going to talk about the notation to express these properties. All right, so the first thing about a parallelogram that we want to kind of just observe is that the opposite sides are parallel. Now think about the word parallelogram, right? It's like, oh, I mean, maybe it has something to do with being parallel. Well, in fact, it does. So these sides here, this side and this side, okay, these opposite sides are parallel. Now, if I don't put this notation in, I can't assume that they're parallel, okay? This will tell me it is a parallelogram, but that's one way of doing that. Another notation would be like this, okay? You could just have a little arrow. So an arrow on a line, this arrow and this arrow indicate that these lines here are parallel, okay? But I said opposite sides, so these two sides here, okay, they're opposite one another, are parallel. So this is how we indicate that opposite sides are parallel. So that is one main property. Again, no particular order, but this should be on your list of properties that you can remember. All right, so what now? Well, how about opposite sides are congruent? Now, what does that word mean? Well, it means this length and this length are the same, the measure of these lengths, and then this length and this length, these sides are the same. Now notice I'm using, just like what I did with the arrows, I'm using two arrows here and two arrows here to not to confuse that this line, this side is parallel with this side. Okay, so you have to be very specific. So 1 and 1, I'm talking about these sides, and 2 and 2, I'm talking about these sides. So one way you could write that, just in terms of congruency, would be like side BC. Okay, so it would be length BC, you can kind of do it that way, all right? Line segment BC can go like so, is congruent to line segment AD, Okay, so this is one way you can express this here, meaning that they have the same angle measure. Now, in geometry, we don't use the equal sign so much because that kind of has more of an algebraic discussion. I don't want to kind of go off on too many tangents. Just know congruency, we're talking about measurement here, right? You should be familiar with congruency, and if you're not, no worries. I teach all about this stuff in my geometry course, which would be excellent for you to take. Okay, now let's talk about more properties here. Well, how about property? So here, let's just actually put things here. We talked about opposite sides are parallel. All right, let me write that a little bit better. Just do a quick here. Opposite sides are parallel. Okay, and we talked about opposite sides are congruent. Okay, now what else can we discuss about a parallelogram? Well, hopefully all of you out there know that the sum of the angles of any quadrilateral are going to add up to 360 degrees. Okay, so this is the sum of the angles. In other words, this angle plus this angle plus this angle plus this angle is going to be 360 degrees. So if you knew that, that's excellent. But this applies to all quadrilaterals. Now, let's take a look at another property. Okay, opposite angles are congruent. So in other words, these angles and these these two opposite angles here have the same angle measure, and these two opposite angles have the same angle measure. So notice the notation. This is how you do it. This is basic geometry here. So let's put that down here. Opposite angles are congruent. All right. So anything else? Okay, well, most of you might be like, no, that pretty much covers it. No, there's another thing here that we need to discuss, and that is this. All right, what are these guys called? I'm kind of trying to sketch this in pretty good. These are diagonals, okay? So the diagonals bisect one another. So in other words, they're going to cut each other in half. So you can kind of represent that this way and this way, and this way and this way. So the diagonals bisect one another. So we could put that in here, diagonals. Let me abbreviate that a little bit better. Diagonals bisect one another. Okay, anything else about parallelograms? No, I think that pretty much covers the main points that I want you to know, okay? So again, when we're talking about quadrilaterals are such common polygons, okay? But what is another common polygon that we study in geometry? Well, you study a three-sided polygon called a triangle. Then you have four-sided polygons, which would be things like this, called quadrilaterals. So this is a triangle, that's quadrilateral. Then five-sided polygons are called what? Let's hear. I'm waiting for you to say it. Pentagons, that's correct. And then you could just go on and on and on. And what you're going to discover as you continue to study this stuff in terms of different type of polygons is that there's something called a regular polygon, and then we can kind of study the angles and sides even more in depth. So, again, this is geometry. There's a lot of topics that are related to this, but let's just take them one at a time. All right, so if you did pretty good with a lot of these properties, then I would say give yourself a happy face and feel pretty good about your knowledge. So, like, okay, we'll give yourself a little A+. Yeah, we'll give yourself a 100%. Maybe 1 star. This wasn't the most difficult problem, but let's say you forgot one of the properties. No big deal. Really, the whole idea behind this video is just have you review this stuff, okay? But use it as feedback. How much of this do you know and don't know? I can just tell you right now, if you need to know geometry, a considerable amount of geometry, whether it's for a particular test, which you absolutely need to know a lot of geometry for many exams, or if you're taking geometry, this is basic foundational knowledge, so you got to follow through. Okay, so if this video helped you out in some way, please consider smashing that like button. That helps me out. And please consider subscribing to my channel. Been on YouTube for a long time. Got hundreds of videos all there for you on my channel. But my best help will always be within my Math Help program. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.